So just to give a brief introduction, I'm Leslie Smith. I'm a network officer with the Scottish Recovery Network, and I'm really pleased today to be having a conversation as part of our peer chat series from Callum with Callum Ross from Habitus Collective. So Callum, welcome.
Thanks, Leslie. It's great fun to talk with you in this medium today. I always like chatting with you. So
yes, we have a capacity to talk forever. So let's see how focused
we'll keep it under 3 or 4 hours. You know, people have dinners to get to. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll try. I think it's because we have lots to share and it's exciting, this topics. But anyway, we'll aim to be focused. So let's find out a little bit about you, Callum. I first met you was a couple of years ago. It was the launch of the International Peer Learning Network, and I had decided at the last minute that I was going to come along, but I also was going to meet a friend. So I found myself in North Queensferry, sitting between a phone and a tablet, connecting to your online event. And there I was. I met you and your fellow facilitators, Lisa and Debbie, and an amazing wide variety group of people from different places around the world. It's quite amazing. So tell us about you.
That's a big one, I suppose. Yeah, I can start on, I suppose I was trying to consider, should I tell a little bit about my work? But I think we're pretty guilty about talking about our work first sometimes. So I suppose start off with who I properly am. Like, I'm Callum. I think I'm a little bit basic. I really enjoy podcasts, like most guys my age. I probably play too many computer games. I love going out for meals. I love that part of going out for your dinner after you've eaten and you're all around the table chatting. I've got really good pals. And I suppose the professional side of things is, as you said in my introduction, I'm a partner in an organization called Habitus Collective, and we are a group of people who are really passionate about making health interventions better. I'm personally very passionate about leadership and peer support, but I've got colleagues in Habitus who are PhD researchers, social scientists, anti-racism activists, and we work in offices in Canada and the UK to deliver services for the NHS, for charities. And then one of our projects, is the International Peer Leadership Network. And like you said, Leslie, it's leaders from all over the place. So I suppose that's about me today. The story could change a little bit tomorrow for sure.
One thing that I was quite intrigued by was that you're actually from Scotland. So you're born in Scotland.
Yeah, born in Scotland. People say I've got a Brigadoon accent because it's not placeable in any way, shape or form. I think my mum's Canadian and my dad is from Aberdeen, but I lived in Arbroath till I was 16, and then I was in Canada to finish high school, and then back to Scotland, Aberdeen, to go to university. So I was back in Scotland for a couple of years. But yeah, I've lived in London, Aberdeen, and then Calgary in Canada for on and off about 10 years. So I still can't make up my mind whether I'll stay in Scotland, whether I'll stay in Canada, or whether it'll be England, but it's kind of fun to be from all over the place.
Well, I'm glad that we get the opportunity to be part of your worldwide connections. But the Iron Brew and Willie is not going to bring you back.
Maybe? Oh, well, Scottish people abroad are just the worst. We are the worst immigrants. Like, my folks now live in Nova Scotia, and for anyone who's ever been on their holidays in Nova Scotia, it's just Scottish people being the most Scottish they could possibly be abroad. Tartan and Burns and, like you said, Ur Willie from every single wall in every single room. They love it.
Brilliant. So can you tell us a little bit about how did you come to peer support?
I suppose I don't want to go, I starting at the beginning is really important, but yeah, to be as brief as possible, really. I think I was always the listening kid in school, and I had a tendency to I like talking with people, and most of my pals, in the nicest possible way, we're like the weirdos, or like the different people, and I like being different to other people in the group. And so I was always interested in listening and just being a part of the community. I went to university and I studied a kind of social sciencey degree. I just wanted to go to university really, and I studied therapy, so I trained as a therapist. But I found I wasn't getting a lot from therapy, and I wanted to kind of rebel against who I was at the time, because everyone kind of struggles with their identity, I think, around those years. And so I ended up actually joining the police. And it is a joke, but it's a joke and it's real. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Hot Fuzz, but I watched that in in university, and the main character had exactly the same degree as me, and I was like, wow, someone you can actually use this degree in the community. And so yeah, to be a bit rebellious, I joined the police, and I was a police officer in South London, so it brought me down to England. I was like, if I'm going to join a police force, I want to join the most exciting one. But I'll be honest, it was just at the beginning of the financial downturn, and really quickly I got a bit disenchanted, and I'm sure that's not for every police officer, but it was the story for me, is I just kept seeing mental health issues, poverty issues, disconnection issues happen over and over again, and the most bizarre things are happening, and I didn't have any of the tools to actually help the people that I was connecting with kind of day to day. And so, after a couple of years, I just gravitated back to mental health. And my parents were in Canada at the time, and because of the financial downturn, they're like, come back to Canada, use your dual citizenship, like work here, there's jobs everywhere. And so I joined the Canadian Mental Health Association, which is the equivalent of, I would say, Mind in Scotland probably is the most, or Penumbra. It's quite like those organizations. And I was there for a long time, and that's where I met amazing people in the community. And one of the facilitators you mentioned in the peer leadership network, her name was Debbie, and she introduced me to this world of peer support, where all of the values that I held about the community knowing the answers, discrimination and disconnection making mental health worse, all of a sudden we had something like peer support, which it was just a bit of an antidote to a lot of these problems that I didn't see a lot of other mental health interventions working very well. I was working in advocacy and policy at the time, and I definitely felt like I was talking on behalf of other people rather than letting them have a position and a platform to talk. And then things snowballed, and we built a large recovery college, and I was able to hire loads of peer support workers because it was timing, and the relationships we built, and the kind of the positive movement. So that's the story, I suppose, from birth to where I am today.
It's quite interesting how it wasn't a straight path into peer support. If I think about my own self, it was, I was involved in collective advocacy, and we were good at supporting each other in the work that we were involved in, but also at some point I was spending quite a lot of my time in and out of services. So the peer support that I was experiencing was what we were offering and receiving to each other when we were going through difficult times. And what's quite interesting was, rather than getting excited about peer support, I was actually quite cynical when I first heard about peer support, because I heard it was going to be offered as a course, that jobs were going to be created. And there was a part of me that was intrigued, but there was also that part of me like, what are they going to do to us next? So I thought, actually, if I'm involved in collective advocacy, I need to find out about this. So I got myself onto the course, and boy, was I converted. It was just like, oh, wow, this is amazing. This is what I've been looking for. This feels like it's the answer, or definitely part of it. It just felt so empowering, and hearing people talk about how turning the difficult times into strengths and using that as a way to help other people. This thing called recovery, I was just like, this was new to me, because I felt that there was no future, and here was people thinking differently and doing things differently, and it was just like, this is exciting. It opened a door that I just ran through, and I've just kept going. So
it is addictive. Peer support is addictive. I'm sorry, it is the most addictive drug probably I've ever tried. It's that smile I get just watching someone, like you said, just building their own self-worth. And for me, like I always make the joke, I'm terrible at interviewing people for jobs, and I've been a manager for a long time because it's just really kind of like everyone. That's just who I am as a person. It probably doesn't do me the biggest amount of favors, but it's amazing to watch people I think are brilliant realize that they're brilliant, and that's what I get hooked on in peer support for sure.
It's certainly worth being hooked on. It's certainly better than lots of other things. So anyway, you made a reference there to Canada and developing peer roles. Can you just tell us a little bit, because for people here who may be thinking about or involved in developing roles, what did you find that works, and what did you find helpful? What were some of your challenges?
Yeah, well, I think the joke, and what's really funny is I first heard about Scottish Recovery Network not when I was living in Scotland, not when I was in London, but in Canada. Scottish Recovery Network's a bit famous in other places, or at least we definitely use your materials to kind of implement activities in other countries, especially English-speaking countries outside of the UK, and I think we saw all this great material, all this great knowledge, and we had a lot of local knowledge, but it was hidden. I always think that really great peer support programs are already operating, but the leaders, they know their community well. And my colleague in Canada, she had been operating this great peer support program for 20 years, but she didn't want to tell too many people because she was frightened that if too many people knew about it, it'd either get closed down, or it would be exposed, or it would be absorbed in the next funding cycle. And so I think the biggest thing that started working for us is we had opportunity. The city I lived in, Calgary, it was a rapidly growing city at the time, a little bit of philanthropic money beyond the government, kind of providing the monies for some services. And so we just took the opportunity and we told the story of peer support over and over and over and over again. And we only wanted to work with people who wanted to work with us. Okay. I've definitely found over time that it's so difficult to convince people that are cynical or don't want to work with you. And fortunately for us, and it doesn't work in every community, but fortunately for us, that community was big enough that we connected with our fans, our cheerleaders, and sometimes that was just having a chit chat around and formulating ideas, but we built ridiculously strong relationships with key people to think about how we kind of unfold things, and just ignored a lot of the detractors. And I did want to talk about that a little bit, because I do want to talk about sustainability, but for the moment, for those number of years, we did some really cool things. And I think in the end, I had 34 peer support workers reporting to, or part of our team in Canadian Mental Health Association. And that started from one. And in some ways it maybe grew too fast, but it was kind of focusing on those fundamentals. It's about relationships. It's about telling a really great story, and then kind of measuring, and not in an overly formal way, but measuring like there really is impact here. And I think we're still not there with the story with peer support, but it truly is as valid as those formal interventions. And I think the best relationships I made with the formal system and hospitals and clinicians, it was to talk about how this is not replacing anything, it's enhancing your work. One of the big stories I used to tell all the time is, I used to call it an active community treatment team. So these were for people who were on community treatment orders. Peer support workers were so successful in those teams in Canada because the manager was really on board, and you can't underestimate that. But also, we told the story of how having a peer support worker on that team enhanced the trust so much faster. So all the other clinicians can gain trust faster than they might on their own, because everyone in health has to focus on trust, but peer support workers are able to do it instantly because of their experience, because they're being open, because it's equal. So they were some of the winning things for us, and we just kept pushing and building on success. But once I left and the pandemic came, I don't know if we had the most solid foundation. So not all positive, but that was the beginning anyway.
Yeah. To hear you speak so passionately about that change within services, especially around peer workers being able to build trust, and that having an effect for the rest of the team. But I think in Scotland, predominantly at the moment, peer workers who are in paid roles are majority within third sector organisations, but those that are in our national health services, again and again and again, that's the feedback that we hear, is that maybe the clinicians were a wee bit sceptical or a lot sceptical at the beginning, they weren't sure, but having a peer worker in the team and seeing the difference it was making and contributing sold them. But we also have a good, a rich developments, wide variety within our communities based and third sector organisations here in Scotland, which is maybe a wee bit different to Canada.
No, I would say it's actually really similar in some ways. Like, I'm so glad that the peer support movement is moving ahead in kind of the third sector in Scotland, because that is similar to Canada. I would say actually in that way, Canada and Scotland have more in common than Canada and in England, whereas England is the NHS that's really pushing forward peer support. And you know, I don't really have a favorite system, but I like the idea that because the tenets and the foundations of peer support are so community led, it would make sense that it's third sector organizations that are leading that. And I think the I've talked with I don't know, it's probably thousands by now of people with lived experience. I think the majority would tell you that peer support in the community is really where it has the most impact for them, because realistically, when you're in crisis, I still think there's an argument about, are peer support workers best placed, you know, in the emergency department or not? And I don't know. I used to feel very passionate about it. I'm kind of in the middle now. So no, I don't think there is a best way to do it or not. What I think is really important is peer support is it's a big movement in it, and lived experience is a really big movement. And there's lots of different approaches, and I really want us to approach this as a broad tent. I think, is that the expression? You know, we have all the way from kind of the, you know, anti-psychiatry to survivaler movement, to, you know, kind of pseudo clinical types of roles, to just friendship and the social determinants of health. And, you know, we can easily start to disagree with one another, but if we're actually taking a peer support kind of perspective of things, we should really be strength-based here. Everyone gets power to kind of platform themselves and to have choice and to look at things that the way they want to look at it. So I definitely I think it's really important we don't say there's a right way of doing things or a wrong way. It's just, these are some places that have worked. My biggest thing is take action. Let's just take some actions, get things wrong. That there are like sustainable ways of doing that. And I think I've just learned with experience of trying it out and failing at a lot of things too, that I can definitely explore.
Yeah. When we've talked in the past, you've talked about something called peer drift. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were thinking there?
Yeah, so this is a term I've started using because I'm trying to think about the future now, right? Because we are making inroads. There are peer support positions. So yeah, what do I think are the new challenges that are coming up? And I would definitely argue peer drift is one of the issues. So there's lots of research done in Canada a few years ago by an organization called the Mental Health Commission. So feel free to give it a Google. And kind of what they have proven is a peer support worker on their own who doesn't connect with other peer support workers, who's in maybe a clinical team or a community team, they're on their own, quite quickly, literally within a period of months, even if they've been trained, quickly they will stop demonstrating their peer support skills and connecting with people from a peer support lens because of the peer pressure that naturally happens in their team. So they start to kind of interpret peer support in a very different type of way. And especially if we have this kind of sprinkling approach of peer supporters across everywhere, you know, one here, two here, another one here, quite quickly we can start to kind of drift away from the all the things that we just said, you know, earlier today with our activities, around what makes peer support unique, quickly you just start to replicate people that are like you. And I think that that is absolutely one of the sustainability challenges of the future. How do we keep peers being peers and not drifting away from those kind of original tenets? And there are proven ways to do that. And so we just want to kind of integrate that into how people get mentorship as a peer supporter, how they actually have the opportunity to lead, because peers are absolutely fantastic. And so where's the continuous development that anyone in any position kind of deserves to keep interested and to keep pushing the movement forward?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're learning a lot about as well, from experience of peers and their roles and ways of how do we ensure together that we understand what peer support is and what the values are, and really helpful, I suppose, like events like today, of thinking about what is it that makes peer support, and ensure that that's what people then bring into, if they're in a work role, into their practice. So I'm aware of that we might be, that time moves really, really quickly when we're chatting, and almost have to bring this to an end. But I would like to pick up on this peer leadership, because especially in Scotland as well, we talk a lot about peer support and peer support roles. But what's this thing about peer leadership? Tell us a wee bit more.
Yeah, so we have this international peer leadership network, and anyone's invited to considers themselves a leader or wants to kind of push forward their leadership skills. For me, it's like an acknowledgement that I've never met a peer support worker that kind of comes straight out of high school to want to, this is their career for now. Like, no peer support worker is a blank slate. They've got all these amazing things from past experiences, professional and personal. And I want to kind of push things forward. And I think so many of us do in the peer movement, where why can't the peer supporters themselves become the managers, become the community leaders, and demonstrate the skills that we need? And there's so many different things that you've got to be conscious of when you're a peer supporter that I don't think necessarily applies to every other job, because you're trying to wear your lived experience hat at the same time as leading a team and leading a movement. And so for me, peer leadership is just about how do we push the role of peer support beyond that kind of one-to-one or group facilitation, all, to other parts of the system. Like, for me, why couldn't a peer supporter manage a hospital? There are hospital managers who started off as an OT or a nurse. Why couldn't the career trajectory for a peer supporter be like that? I don't want us to be boxed in, because it's now, like, a bit like you just said, Leslie, you were a bit skeptical right at the beginning of peer support, and I'm starting to get a little bit skeptical now, where it's like, well, here you go, here's your peer role, now this far and no further. I hope you're happy now, you've got your lived experience and that's it. How do we keep kind of moving forward and pushing up, saying, no, I've got lived experience, and I've got a master's degree, and I've was in a bank before, and I can use all of this combined experience to help you really understand the people that are accessing our services.
That's brilliant. And I think that's something that many peer supporters in Scotland would agree with. They want more opportunities. They've got something to offer, and they want to be part of the change. And it's something that in Scottish Recovery Network that we want to be building on and developing. People are awesome, and there's so much that we could be part of and we could be involved with. And hopefully that's what we're all going to be working towards. So I'm afraid we're going to have to bring this to a close. Alan, I wish I didn't. I would just have to bring you back at another point. But in closing, is there anything that you find a final word or anything you'd like to share with people before saying?
I'm all about networking, so I'd love to connect with anyone in the space today, or when you share, the podcast and the video. So I work for an organization called Habitus Collective. You can just Google that, and also come along to our leadership network if you're really interested in kind of pushing that forward. I think everyone here is a peer leader today, if they want to be. Leader doesn't mean manager; it can mean lots of different things.
I think that's a really important thing to be aware of. A leader is when we get involved and we take people with us. It isn't about that a defined role as, say, a manager or whatever. So on that note, thank you for today. Callum, you've given us lots
Thanks so
to think
much.
about and lots to explore as part of our future as well. And hopefully you could be part of that. But also for those who would be like to, there's the International Peer Leadership Network. We'll put the link into the chat and as part of the follow-up from today. On behalf of us all, Callum, thank you very much.